I'm going to explain how to use CourtListener and Claude to look through federal court dockets. I'll teach you how to search through PACER data on CourtListener, and then I'm going to show you how you can automate this using Claude with a CourtListener plugin that we built. If you take a look at my screen, I've got a PDF of the complaint from the New York Times versus OpenAI / Microsoft lawsuit. This is a case that you probably heard about in the news because it's pretty high profile. This is the real complaint that was filed in the Southern District of New York. And of course, I found this complaint directly on CourtListener. I'm going to leave a link to CourtListener in the description of this video. It is a free resource run by the nonprofit Free Law Project. You don't even need an account to search through things, but you will need an account if you want to connect it to Claude, which again, I'll be showing later in this video. If you want to look for dockets, you're going to want to go into the recap archive. And PACER is the federal court docketing system. And I guess they're naming their PACER archive recap. And they have excellent coverage over all the district courts in the United States. By default, when you go to CourtListener, it's going to have case law selected. That's also very useful for legal research. But if you actually want docket entries, you need to go into recap. So go over here and click on search PACER data. And that's going to bring you to this scary screen called Advanced Recap Search. And this is where we can actually go in and try to find a specific court documents. And there are a lot of parameters here. You've got the search box here. The operators, which have a lot of detail to them, are explained in a lot more detail in the FLP wiki, which is, again, the Free Law Project wiki. One of the first things you might consider configuring is the jurisdiction tab. So if you click on this, by default, every single jurisdiction is going to be included in your search. And you can see here that we've got all the federal appellate courts, we got the district courts, and also the bankruptcy, and then some of the other miscellaneous courts as well. So if you were only interested in the district courts, you might do something like click clear all, which you'll notice over here has unchecked every single box in every one of these tags. And then if you were only interested in the district courts, you can click on this thing, which is check current tab. And you'll see that that just enabled all of the check boxes for the federal district tab, but it did not continue to enable them for the federal appellate tab. So that's how you can quickly do that. And of course, you can also clear the current tab. And if you knew, for example, that this lawsuit was definitely filed in the Southern District of New York, it might make sense to only select the Southern District of New York. And then you can click apply. And then for the search, this is going to be the main thing that you want to look at. The other parameters that you might want to put in are probably going to be docket date and entry dates. So if you knew an approximate date of when the docket was created or when the document that you're looking for was filed, this is where you would put that in. And of course, you can select this little calendar pop-up, or you can just type in the date yourself. I'm going to just do a search for OpenAI, and we're going to see what comes up. I'm going to put that in quotes because I'm looking for the exact text OpenAI. I don't want it to look for similar text. And let's just see what comes up. I honestly don't really know what to expect. OpenAI is a big and famous company, so I'm not surprised to see there's quite a few results. Let's go and scroll through a few of these and see what comes up. We got the Sullivan versus OpenAI Foundation case, which looks pretty new. Denial versus OpenAI. And if we continue scrolling down, maybe we'll find the New York Times versus OpenAI case, although I think it might be called Microsoft versus New York Times. So that might be a better search term. We'll click on this Tremblay one here, and I'll just give you guys an overview of what the dockets look like. We have the option to look through the docket, and every docket entry is going to have a document number. And so we can see here that the first document filed in this case in the Southern District of New York was this motion to quash Tremblay. And I'm not really familiar with this case. I don't know exactly why they filed that motion, but if you want to look at it, you can just click on the download PDF button over here, and this is going to pull up the motion. And this is really useful because if you're able to download the PDF and you want to learn more about what's going on in the case, you could, of course, read it if you're a lawyer, if you have that expertise, but you could also download the PDF and then upload it into a tool like Claude or ChatGPT and have one of those AI tools help you understand what is going on, which is really, really useful. Now, you'll notice if we look down at attachment 2 here, which is called Exhibit A, it's not available for download. We're actually being prompted to buy it on PACER. PACER is the federal court docketing system, and unfortunately, they're not free, so if you want to download PDFs, you have to purchase them. I believe it's about 10 cents a page. And if you click on Buy on PACER, that should take you to the actual PACER login for the district court that you were looking for. And you can log in with your account. And again, this will probably charge you. I believe PACER gives you, I think it's $15 of free downloads per quarter. So maybe you'll get it for free, maybe you won't. But then you might be wondering, well, how does CourtListener have some of the PDFs available, but not all of them? So CourtListener has a browser extension called the Recap extension, which I would definitely recommend you install. And if you have it installed and then you go into PACER and purchase a document, CourtListener is going to grab that and save it into their database, and then it's going to be available for anyone that wants to look at the case in the future. So what that means is somebody, I don't know who, a while ago or maybe recently even, downloaded this motion to quash, using Pacer. So they actually purchase it and they basically give it to the entire community for free. So thank you to whoever did that. And as you scroll down, you'll be able to see more of the dates, docket numbers, and other information going on in the case. And oftentimes the descriptions are pretty useful here. Sometimes they're detailed, sometimes they're not very detailed. There are often attorney names in there. So if you're looking for a particular attorney or want to look up some of their prior work, this is often a good way to do it. I'm going to do another search query to look for that Microsoft versus New York Times lawsuit. I do know for a fact, like if we click on the document here, that is the New York Times Company versus Microsoft Corporation. And I know that OpenAI does appear as a defendant as well, but I believe it's indexed as Microsoft. So let's give that a try. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking for a docket that has the terms Microsoft, and I'm looking for New York Times. Let's go ahead and click search. You can see here that one of the results that comes up is the New York Times Company versus Microsoft Corporation. This is in the Second Circuit, and I don't know if that's the exact one we want. I want to have the district court docket. So we're going to keep scrolling down. And if we look here, we are going to finally see the New York Times Company versus Microsoft Corporation. So now let's go ahead and open that. And this is obviously a really big case. It's been going on for a while. So it's gigantic. And if we scroll down, there are a lot of docket entries. And if we keep scrolling down, there are 130 docket entries on this page, and there are 9 pages. And if we go over to the last page, which is going to take a second because the docket's really big, you're going to see that there are over, I believe, almost 1,500 docket entries, and there are way more documents because if you look, a lot of the entries contain attachments, and there's probably thousands and thousands of documents in this docket. But that's what we're looking at here, and it is currently August 19th, 2026, and this case is still going on, so we're seeing stuff filed as recently as 5 days ago. And unsurprisingly, some of the more recent documents aren't necessarily going to be purchased, but if you go back to the first page and look at the complaint, which should be document number 1, everything here is totally purchased. And that's not really that surprising because if it's a high-profile case, oftentimes members of the general public, law professors, journalists are going to be looking into the stuff because it's interesting. Okay, so that's the basics of how docket entries work in CourtListener. Hopefully that made sense. You might have noticed, though, that it was a little bit annoying to find a few things. Crafting the right search terms is a bit of an art, and it's not so much legal work as it is translating your intentions into CourtListener's technical language for searching through the docket entries. And I didn't want to dwell too much on that syntax or on how the different parameters work, because if you use a plugin that connects to Claude, you can lean on AI to do a lot of that work for you. And this is a chat that I was doing the other day, and I just asked it to find the complaint in the OpenAI, which I'm putting in parentheses, Microsoft complaint versus New York Times. And it was able to do all of this for me. And I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video that explains how to install this free plugin that we built. But it will basically go in and run through that search. So anything we were able to do, Claude is also going to be able to do. And Claude can see all these parameters. Claude knows exactly how all these different operators work. And it's going to be able to translate that stuff for you and basically type in the right search queries and then read through the docket entries on your behalf. If we look here, it was able to find the complaint very, very easily, and it gives you the direct docket link. So if I click on this, the exact docket we were just looking at should pop right up, which is really, really useful. It also saw all the 69 attached, which is a lot. I told it to just look at the complaint, download it, and then summarize it to me so I could just get a general sense of what was going on. And then again, I asked for the docket URL. Let's go and ask it one more thing. One thing I noticed when looking through this case was that Microsoft filed a motion to dismiss. The notice of motion, I believe, was this docket entry 51, and then the memorandum of law was this docket entry 52. So I'm going to tell Claude to download entry 52, which is the motion to dismiss, summarize it, and tell me what it says. So Claude is doing its thing, which ultimately is using the CourtListener API under the hood. If we take a look at what it was doing, we're going to see that in the response from CourtListener, we can actually see memorandum of support in all caps, in support, : If we go back over here, you're going to notice that we get that exact text. So everything that we're seeing, Claude is also seeing. And I'm only highlighting that just to point out that if you're able to see it on this page, Claude is also able to see it with very high accuracy. And Claude even pointed out that I misread this. That was not Microsoft's motion to dismiss. That was OpenAI's motion to dismiss. So it was good on Claude that it actually was able to read that document. And the other thing that Claude is doing here is it is going to download and save that PDF for me. And why this can be useful is if you're working through a docket and you're trying to understand what's going on, you don't necessarily want to have Claude have to keep hitting CourtListener because they have pretty strict rate limits. So what Claude actually did was download the PDF and put it into a folder, which I'll show you now. In my documents, I have this folder called CourtListener Library. And if we go into dockets, we can see we have a CourtListener folder and then New York Southern District. And then this is the actual folder for the lawsuit that we were looking at. And if we go into PDFs, we can see the complaint that it downloaded. We can also see docket entry number 52, which again was OpenAI's motion to dismiss. And if we click on this guy, it'll pop up and it'll work exactly as we expect. And maybe you wanted to analyze this motion dismiss, and maybe you wanted to look and see if all the citations were correct. Well, the good news is because you're already connected to CourtListener, this becomes very easy. And what I mean by that is, let's look at this brief. And if we go into the table of authorities, we're going to see a bunch of cases they cited. And one of them, for instance, Authors Guild versus Google Inc., that's also available on CourtListener under the case law section. So what I mean by that is if you go and copy the citation over here, and then we're going to go into CourtListener, and then we're going to actually go into case law. If I type in that citation and hit search, and when it returns, you're going to notice that it detected that I put in a citation, and it's telling me, hey, it looks like you're looking for Authors Guild versus Google from 2015. And if we then go back into the table of authorities, we're going to notice that that is the exact case that I was looking for. So I can even go back over here, and then I can click on it, and then now I have the full text of that opinion. And then now if I really wanted to cite check this, what I would want to have is Claude read this opinion and then read the brief. So I'll go ask Claude to read this opinion, which again, it will easily be able to do because it's connected to CourtListener, and then tell me if OpenAI actually used it in the way that case was supposed to be used. So now I'm just going back in Claude and I'm saying, hey, did the brief correctly use Authors Guild versus Google Inc.? And Claude is going to do exactly that same thing. It is going to go to the case law API. It is going to search by citation. It is going to download the opinion into a markdown file. It is then going to read the opinion. And then it's also got the brief, which it can read. And then it's going to be able to do its analysis all without us having to orchestrate any of that. And I am going to have to yell at Claude here because it looks like it didn't go and download the opinion, and it's kind of just going from memory. So I'm going to be a little bit more explicit here, and I'm going to say, you got to go and download the opinion and read it for me. This also goes to show you that the more explicit you are with Claude in terms of what you want it to do, the better it's going to be. So I just said, hey, was it used correctly? But what I really wanted to do was download the opinion. And if we look at its work, again, what it's doing is it is searching just like we did in the case law API using that court reporter citation, and then it is getting a link to the opinion. It is going to download that link, and then it's going to read the opinion, and everything's going to work. And we go back into my Finder, we're going to click on cases instead of dockets now, and then over here we can see Authors Guild versus Google Inc., and now we've got the opinion in HTML and also Markdown, which is very token efficient for the agent. If we open up the opinion, we're going to see Leval, Circuit Judge, the copyright dispute tests the boundaries of fair use, and then if we actually go into the opinion, we're going to see Leval, Circuit Judge, this copyright dispute tests the boundaries of fair use. And again, this is just to show you that we actually have the full text downloaded, local, and very easily accessible to Claude. And here's Claude's analysis. Again, the point of this video is not really to showcase Claude analyzing the opinion, but rather show you how you can orchestrate this stuff and how you can use the CourtListener plugin to make this very, very easy. There'll be a link in the description of this video to another video I made that goes over how to install this in Claude. It's totally free. The only thing you need is an API key. I'm also going to leave my email in the description of this video in case you have any questions or comments. If you need help installing this for you or your firm, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to sit down and personally make sure it works for you.